There was a story told a few years back in the National Post by Barbara Kay involving a young Yazidi woman, someone who fled to Canada for safety, who said that she found on a city bus and was able to see the man who held her captive overseas. And this was quite a chilling story for a lot of people, but now we have one that makes that look significantly as part of a pattern here. And it was a report on CTV that said several Yazidi women, former ISIS sex slaves in Canada, have now been received harassing and threatening phone calls from people claiming to be their captors. For another True North Talk, I'm very pleased to be joined by Reverend Majed Shafie from One Free World International. Reverend, thanks very much for your time today.
Pleasure being here with you.
Now, I know that One Free World International has done a lot of work with the resettlement efforts for a lot of people that have come from this region anyway. But tell me what it is that's really happened here, because when I read that initial CTV report, I mean, this is not something that I could even imagine, but here it is in Canada.
Well, let's just introduce what the Yazidi victims or survivors are. They are sex slaved by ISIS. The ISIS, when they took over this part of Iraq, they slaved more than 7,000 Yazidi girls. I met with some of the survivors, and we was able to help many of them as much as 600 plus. Some of them as young as 9 years old, that they used to rape her more than 20 times a day. Wow. So through our work and our effort, we was able to advocate on their behalf with the Canadian government. That's when the Canadian government agreed on bringing around 1,200 family of them here to Canada. So these survivors is suffering a lot from trauma, from the torture, from the persecution, from the rape that they faced. So when they came here to Canada, they assumed the safety and the security. Obviously, the Canadian government really failed. It's a failed of leadership with their health, with their mental health issues, with the services that they provided. And it was up to organizations like One Free World International and others to be able to step in and to try to help them and to protect them. Now, in the midst of all of this, in the middle of all of this healing, when you come here to Canada, they start to receive calls and emails and threatening calls from some of the ISIS fighters in Syria. And I spoke with one of them, was one of these criminals that they was threatening them, and he will insult them. He will tell them, what we did to you in Syria, we'll do it again in Canada. So some of the survivors immediately ran to One Free World International. We immediately confronted the callers and the threats, and we communicated with our intelligence community and the policing community in Canada, and we reported to the York Regional Police, and right now is under investigation.
Yes, one of them was very graphic. I can't even read it, but it's a man who said, "I am your rapist," or "I was your rapist." We had, Arabic accents that are consistent with the region of the people where these fighters are coming from. And you also then have this other dimension, which I think in Canada is particularly significant, which is the way that we deal with resettling people that are from ISIS-controlled regions. And it's one thing if these calls were coming from, around the world, which is bad enough, but we're talking about people that government policy may well allow back into the country.
Yeah, this is absolutely foolish. If you left Canada to go fight against Canadian forces, if you left Canada to join a terrorist organization, if you left Canada to commit crimes against humanity, quite honestly, I don't think that you get a second chance. But this is up to our politically correctness and up to our politically correct prime minister in order to decide, what's good for Canada and what's not good for Canada. I'm saying this in a very sad way, really.
When you talk about the women and girls that have been victimized in this way and the investigations that are ongoing, do we know where those calls are coming from? Have police made any headway on pinpointing locations?
Well, right now, with the new technology that we have today, these calls can be coming from Canada or outside of Canada, and you can just change the phone number. So one of the calls came from Los Angeles, one of the calls came from Syria, one of the calls coming from Canada. It's three different individuals that are threatening these girls. Now, with a new technology, you can have an app where you can put any number from any region. So the police is still investigating that exactly to know and to monitor from where it's coming from, the source of these calls.
When we see this, I mean, one question that comes up, how are they tracking down these people? Do we know that?
I can tell you by fact that, as I said, is under the investigation, so many of the information is not known to the public yet. But I can tell you that both York Regional Police and the intelligence units is working on this case, because there is two things that really the policing community have to respond to, two issues here. Number one issue, if this call is coming from inside of Canada or outside of Canada, and if it's outside of Canada, from where? The second issue, who leaked this information of these phone numbers, is a personal phone numbers, personal contact information of these Yazidi girls, of these victims and survivors here in Canada. Who leaked them? Who leaked all of this information to ISIS fighters in Syria? So this is two issues that the policing community have to respond to.
One of the women gave a heartbreaking quote in an interview. She had said that she's scared, and these are people that came to Canada to escape fear, to escape hardship, to escape being victimized by these people. And when we talk about a smart and responsible refugee program in Canada, it has to be that we resettle people that are genuinely facing this type of persecution. So what is it Canada can do better? I mean, these people were given a home in Canada. I don't think any Canadians would object to that. But if they're not feeling safe, what more could be done from a government perspective, if anything?
I think our Canadian intelligence security systems have to be aware of who coming to the country. Like, for example, the cases that you mentioned about a woman saw somebody from ISIS in the bus, for example. This has been Monthly World International aware of 4 different cases similar to this case. Some of it was proven false. Some of it was still under the investigation right now. But in reality, when we're talking about newcomers and we're talking about refugees, we have to focus on the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable people is the people, the minorities group that basically facing the killing and the genocide in Iraq and in Syria, such as the Yazidis and the Christians and so on. So we start by our immigration system. Our immigration system have to focus on the most vulnerable. The second thing is our intelligence security system. We are taking refugees just on recommendation of the UNHCR. Well, UNHCR does not present the Canadian government. It's very important that our intelligence have a say. It's very important that we know the background in every and each one that coming. And it's very important that we know and we have a system. If we found that some of them work with ISIS or leaked ISIS in any way, shape, or form, we have to react immediately to arrest them.
What do you think needs to be understood by Canadians, if not already, about what these women are going through? Because I know that having read into this, there is just an absolutely horrific, horrific story that each one of them has. And in a lot of cases, I'm not sure Canadians have focused much on the Yazidis. I think in refugee discussions, we typically talk about Syria, we talk about the border that's coming from across the United States into Canada, but I don't know if this particular plight is as well understood.
I don't think it's understood as well. I think in general, we have a very serious problem in our country. It's called politically correctness. So we don't like to discuss a group that facing persecution. We just like to speak in general. Well, it doesn't work. So when we're talking about, for example, the Syrian refugees, our country accepts more than 40,000 Syrian refugees here in Canada. While with the Yazidi community, which is the minority that facing persecution, they have no militias to protect them in the Middle East. They are just girls and women that face sex slavery and human trafficking. Our government just allowed 1,200 of them. Why is that? Why there is no balance? And what about other groups that need their protection, like the Christians, the Sabians and Mandiyans, and even the LGBT community in these countries? I think what our people have to know is to speak with the Canadian government, to focus on the most vulnerable minority, to give them a fair chance in life and to start healing.
How has your organization been able to really involve itself in these cases in the absence of what you say the government could or should be doing more of?
We had to. We had no another option. I was myself prisoner back home in Egypt. When I converted from Islam to Christianity, I was tortured. I was severely put in prison and received the death penalty. That's when I escaped. And I came here to Canada as a UNHCR refugee. The truth and the reality that I know their pain, and we couldn't remain silent. So immediately we started an operation in Iraq where we start rescuing these girls when we send medical supplies to the refugee camps. But also here in Canada, we start to advocate on their behalf. And with the help with many of the media tools, we was able to put pressure on the Canadian government to bring some results.
Well, I'm glad you have been. Reverend Majed Shafie from One Free World International joining me now. Reverend, thanks as always for your time, sir. God bless.
God bless you too. Thank you.